Thanks for having me. There are two difficulties that I'm experiencing. One, I had a beer with Christophe, Belgian beer, so I hope that that works. And also, I upgraded my laptop while on the train here, so I hope that everything will stay working. We'll see. So, who here loves working with PHP? Yeah, okay. This is a talk for you because we're going to talk about the cool stuff that you can do with PHP and some things that you might not know yet. So for the people that don't know me yet, I'm Freek. I'm a developer at a Belgian company called Spatie. My handle is Freek Murze. I have a blog, freek.dev, where I talk about modern PHP development in Laravel. And together with my teams, I've created 3 SaaS applications, Mailcoach, which is a better MailChimp, Odeer, which is the best uptime tracker, and Flare, which is the best exception tracker for Laravel applications. Now, before heading into the talk, I'd like to give you an update on our open source efforts. We currently have about 300 packages registered on Packagist. They have been downloaded now for, a lot of times. 400 million, which is, I think, quite amazing for a team of 9, because we are at 9 with people, at 9 with Spatie. And they are being downloaded for 20 million times a month, and that number is also rising. You can see a big list of open source stuff that we did on our company website, and I'm pretty sure there's something there for your next project. We don't live from open source. We live from payments from our clients and also by selling paid products. And you can find a list of the paid products that we have made on our company website as well. Our open source stuff is also not free. There's a special license on that called Postcardware, which means if you use a package of ours, you need to send us a postcard, and every day we get postcards from all over the world, and that is really quite nice. And we share those postcards on our website as well. You can see them on our virtual postcard wall. So with that out of the way, let's talk a little bit about PHP. So once in a while you get like these posts like PHP is dead, don't use PHP, use something else. And I always think that the people that say that, they didn't pay attention, or they are not using PHP at all. PHP powers a big percentage of the web. Some say 70%, some say 80%, but it's a lot. And there are quite some nice projects out there that are used by many people. Things like Drupal, WordPress, Laravel, Symfony. And PHP is a language where amazing new things are being added every year. Maybe not in PHP 8.2 this year, but hopefully again in 8.3. But 8.1 and 8.0 were certainly pretty good. Here's a short list of things that were added quite recently. We have native elums, short closures, some new operators, and that all coupled with massive performance improvements. But PHP is not only very good because of the language itself, but also because of its ecosystem. And a big part in that ecosystem is, then this surprises nobody in this room, hopefully, is Composer, which is a tool that allows you to pull in third-party code. And the nice thing is that we now can pull in third-party code just everywhere, and the Composer has resulted in a massive amount of packages that are being created. Here's a statistic from Packagist.org with how many packages that we install per month. And due to the beer, I'm not going to pronounce this number, but it's quite a lot. So I think that the PHP ecosystem is pretty healthy because we have a very good language that is still growing. And another important part why I think that the PHP ecosystem is healthy is because it is influenced by other ecosystems as well. And I think this is one of the most important takeaways of this talk, that we need to be influenced by other ecosystems, that we don't invent everything ourselves, but we should look at other things as well. And when we try to mold PHP into what other ecosystems can do, then we will find surprising ways to use PHP. And we see already some interesting community projects. In this talk, I want to focus on some cool stuff that is influenced by other ecosystems. We are going to talk a little bit about Tailwind, about how you can achieve concurrency, a bit about Livewire, a little bit about testing, and then if we have a little bit time, I have a little dessert for you called Invade. So let's first start with Tailwind. So who here knows Tailwind? Okay, a lot of people know Tailwind. We're in the Laravel ecosystem with this audience, and we all know that it's a wonderful CSS utility framework where we can put utilities like text color, some margin utilities, some padding utilities on each element, and we can just drive a layout that way. What if we could use this front-end technology in another kind of way, namely the terminal? That is what Tailwind can do for us, and I'd like to give you a little demo of that. So I have here a little artisan command called Tailwind command, and let's execute this and see how it looks like. I'm actually going to use my terminal window because it looks better in there, and then I'm going to use this fancy new window management thing that I'm using here for the first time. So let's hope it all works. Maybe like this, yeah, and then that fancy hotkey from Christophe, like that. Yeah. Okay, now I can go into my fantastic functions thing here and execute Tailwind. Tailwind. Like that. Yeah. And then you can see welcome to my command. And I've underlined it a little bit, very 80s style with some underscores. And yeah, this could be okay, but it could be so much better, right? So instead of using these info little things, we can also render this view a little bit different. And how do we do that on the web? In a normal application, we just render a view, and that is what we are going to do here as well. So I've already imported Tailwind's render command here, and I'm going to use that function, and I'm going to render a view called CLI info. And let's take a look at that blade file. It's info.blade.php. And when I render this now, you can see that we just have this welcome command. If I change this, you can see I get the 2 here. Okay, now I want to add a little bit of layout here. And I'm just going to do the same as I would do when styling things in the browser. I'm going to put it in a div, and now I'm going to try to make it pretty. So I'm going to add a class on this. I'm going to make the background blue. So let's see how that looks like. Okay, so it's blue, but it isn't readable anymore. Maybe it's better if the text would be white. So let's try that. Okay. Maybe we also want to center this, so we are going to justify it to the center. Okay, nice. Maybe a little bit of padding 1 maybe. Let's see what that would look like. So now we have a more beautiful block here. And what I don't like is that it touches here the previous line. So we are going to add a little bit of margin here as well. And yeah, this is probably a much nicer welcome message than what we had before. And I've used a technology from the front end, or an idea from the front end, and brought it to through the terminal. And this is way easier than using those info things in the in the artisan command here. Let's go back to the keynote. So with Tailwind, it can be used to make your CLI commands very pretty. And under the hood, it's already being used by Laravel. Nuno used it to revamp all of the terminal output in Laravel recently. And it's actually also Nuno who created this Tailwind library. Pretty cool. Okay, let's move on to a different subject, concurrency in PHP. So PHP scripts, they usually run from the beginning to the end. But our JavaScript buddies, they are used to another model where they can just run things asynchronously. So let's take a look at how we can do that in PHP. And there are actually already quite some options for this. So we have big tools like MPHP, and this is how you would do stuff concurrently in MPHP. There's also React PHP. And this library allows you to create a loop and then add things onto the loop. So it's just add some code, specify when it should happen, and then at the end run the loop. And you can see that while it's very powerful, it's already quite some boilerplate. But to understand how this thing works, and how we can simplify it, I've cooked up a little example for you. So we are going to go back to PHP Storm here. I don't think I need the terminal anymore, so that can be gone. Let's toggle this on. And I have a few commands here, the 4 commands. This can go, and I should open up Ray. Hopefully it stays on this window. Yep. So Ray is a little debugger helper that I've made. So every time I call the function Ray here, that string will be displayed in here using that color. So what will this command do? This command has a variable, take the blue pill. And if it's true, then we will output in Ray, I have taken the blue pill, and we will make it blue. And otherwise, we will have taken the red pill. Okay, let's execute this and see what happens. I've taken the blue pill. Okay, sure, that is true. Okay, now let's see what happens when we set this to false. Can anybody guess what will happen? I guess you can. So I've taken the red pill. Okay, so I have to choose between the red pill and the blue pill. But I don't want to choose. I want to have them both. Is there a value here that can give me both of these pills? Does anybody know the correct value for this? So I want to have blue and red. Yeah, you've seen the talk before. Yeah, you had too much beer, you forgot. Okay, I'll tell you. It's a function called fork. And let's see what happens if you do this. So I'm going to execute this. And now I have taken the blue pill and I have taken the red pill. So it was true and false at the same time, which is a neat parlor trick, right? So let's explain what is happening here. So process control fork is a standard method in PHP. Probably in all the installations that you use, this function is available. It's an extension, but it's a pretty standard extension. And it forks the process. So as soon as you execute this, you're not executing PHP once, but you're using it twice. So a child process will be created and started from this point. And if you are the child process, then the function will return the new process ID, so a number, a truth value. And if you are the parent process, it will return 0, which is a false value. And that is how we do this. So if I put another here, the end here, and let's make it green or something, and I execute this, then you can see that we actually executed this twice, and that is how this little trick works. Now, in the process, what happened here? So in the process control function family, there are actually quite some other interesting functions, which in the interest of time, I'm not going to explain fully. There are tricks to see when a certain process has stopped, when it has finished. There are also processes, the socket functions, the socket functions, which can allow you to communicate between the parent and the child process. And we at Spatie, we've actually packaged this up to make a very nice package called Fork that allows you to run stuff concurrently without taking a look at those process control and WebSocket functions. And how you can use our fork library to run things concurrently is much simpler than the existing solutions. You can just do fork new, you call run on it, and you give it a couple of closures, and they will all run at the same time here. So here I have a function sleep, and when that executes, then we will send to Ray we're starting to sleep, we're actually going to sleep, and we are going to say when we have woken up. And when I execute this, we're not going to do this and then that, and then that, and then that, and then that. No, these things will all happen at the same time. So this function should be finished in 5 seconds. Yeah, this window management is really making me a little bit mad. So I think I've turned it off like this. Okay, so let's hope this stays this way. And let's execute this little function. So we are going to execute fork 4. And you can see that all of these sleep processes started at the same time, and after 5 seconds, they have all been done. That's how that works. Now, while I was working on this little demo, I discovered something funny. And I'm going to show it to you. So let's simplify this a little bit. So we are just going to output the seconds and sleep the seconds. And then we are going to change 7 here, maybe 5, maybe 2, here 3, here maybe 1. And let's see what happens. So I'm going to execute this again. So 1, 2, 3. I've actually made the simplest sorting algorithm just with sleep. But don't use it in production because it's kind of slow. But it works. It's just one line of code. So that's another neat parlor trick for later in the evening. Let's go back to the keynote and see what I have next for you. So yeah, concurrency in PHP, it is possible. There are some very feature-rich libraries out there, like React PHP and AmpPHP. But if you prefer a very lightweight solution, take a look at our fork library. Okay, next up, Livewire. Who here uses Livewire? Okay, quite some people, I guess 1/3 and 2/3 not. For the ones that use Livewire, you probably aren't going to learn anything new in usage here, but maybe you learn some things about how Livewire works under the hood. And for the ones that don't use Livewire, this is really nice. So, Livewire is a library, and it allows you to use server-rendered partials. And it allows you to build a dynamic front end without coding JavaScript. So if you need a little bit of interactivity in your page, or a whole bunch of interactivity, then Livewire can help you, and you don't need to write any JavaScript yourself. It's a library that was created by a very smart guy, Caleb Porzio, and he was inspired by Chris McCord, which is the Taylor Otwell from the Phoenix framework. which is a framework written in Elixir. And Chris McCord, he created LiveView, and that was the inspiration for Livewire. Now in Phoenix LiveView, it's even more impressive because Elixir, the language, is so fast that Chris McCord could make like real-time games using this technology because with Elixir you can process just an insane amount of requests. But to Livewire. So traditionally, if you want to have a little bit of interactivity on your page, what are you going to do? You probably are going to create some API endpoint at your application, and when the data needs to be refreshed without refreshing the entire page, then your JavaScript is going to make an AJAX request to that JSON endpoint, and you are going to take that response and put it into the HTML. But with Livewire, we are going to do this differently. We are going to actually render the HTML on the server. We are going to send it to the front end, and we are going to replace that rendered HTML in the DOM on the client. Okay, I have a little demo for that as well. Let's go to, I think my browser first. I'm going to open it up like this, Valet open, and I don't need this one anymore. Yeah, so this is the most basic example that I can give with Livewire. So we are going to click here and this number goes up, and we have, if you click -1, then that number goes down. Now let's see what happens over the wire here. So I'm going to clear the network tab, and if I do +1 here, you can see that there's a request here, and here you can see inside of this JSON that we see the HTML here that is being used to replace what we have currently in the DOM. So you can see here the value of the counter is 4, and this is what we placed here. If I do this again, then you can see that we get the HTML here, the value of the counter, and it is now 5. Okay, let's see what we needed to do as a developer to have this, albeit simple, bit of interactivity in our browser. So let's go back to PHP Storm. Let's go to the web. I don't know if you noticed, I was on a route here, count, and you can see that we have a view here, counter, that we load, and this is what we see in the browser. So we have a title, counting with Livewire, and then we have here that Livewire statement, counter, and every Livewire component consists of 2 things. Or most components consist of 2 things, a view and a PHP class. Let's maybe go to the view here first. Here you can see the value of the counter, and here you can see that we use a little bit of state here, that count. And here are those 2 buttons, and those are buttons with a special directive on it called wire click, and then here what will be a function name. So let's see where this is being used. Let's go to the PHP class that is the counterpart of this Livewire component. So here you can see that a component in Livewire is just a regular class. It's something very small, even this one, and we extend Livewire's component. And just like in Vue, a Livewire component has a little bit of state, and you should keep in mind that whenever this state changes, then Livewire will re-render our view. And when Livewire will re-render the view, it will take care of rendering the view itself and also passing it via AJAX to the browser. So first, on the initial go, our counter is 1, and if I refresh here, then you can see the counter is 1. If I would have put this to 3, then you can see that we start off with 3. Now here on those buttons, we have here wire click, and we say we want to execute add if we click this button. And add is defined here, the add function, and we just add 1 to the count, and we also have subtract 1 to the count. So when I click this, the state changes, and when the state changes, the component will be re-rendered. And that is exactly what is happening here. And for this little piece of interactivity, this is the only thing that I needed to do here. Now, this is a silly example, of course, so let's kick it up a little bit. So I also have a search example, which is something that you might really want to add on a website. And if I type something here, no quotes found. Maybe didn't see the database. Let's try it. Yeah, here we have something. So if I type something here, then I search the database for some quotes, and I just render all the quotes that are in my database. This is something that you'll see at many sites. So let's see how we implemented this using Livewire. So again, we are going to go via the route. So I was on the route search. I have a view search. Again, it's a very simple view. We use a search Livewire component here. That component consists of two components, of two parts. And let's again first take a look at the blade component. So here you can see that we have an input element. Excuse me. And we have another wire directive on here, wire model, which binds this to something that is in our Livewire component itself. So this is the component that that is backing that view. So a little bit of state. And whenever I type something in here, in this input type, then Livewire will populate that value here in this property. And so again, when this changes, then the Livewire component will re-render itself. Let's see what happens when we re-render this component. So when we re-render this component, we are going to execute a function, getQuotes. And if we're not searching for anything, then we're just going to give an empty collection. And otherwise, we are going to search our quote model for that query that we passed. And in our view, we are simply going to render all the quotes that we have in our database. So here, these are the quotes that we found, and we're just going to render them in our list. And that's basically everything that we needed to do to make this work. So you don't need to know any JavaScript, and I can have this little piece of interactivity. I actually have, if I'm connected to the internet, that very component running on my own blog. So this one, I didn't use any JavaScript, or I didn't have to write any JavaScript myself. This is just a simple Livewire component. Now you might think, hey, this idea, it's a little bit dangerous. It sounds a little bit funky. Not going to use it. Let me give you a very big example of where this idea is used in the wild, because the PHP community is not the first to use this thing. So I guess you all know this this website. It's called GitHub. It's kind of awesome. There's a lot of inspiring code that you can read there. And so let's see what happens if I navigate to something else here. So let's maybe go. Oh, what did I do? Network here. I wanted to do this away. So let's maybe go here to the close tab, because there aren't any open things here. Let's remove this again. If I click this here, then for this URL 6 here, what is GitHub sending here? not the whole page, but just a fragment of the page. And this is only here, this part that was different. So they're using the Livewire idea for their entire site. And if you're navigating around through the whole of GitHub, you're going to see that they do this everywhere. So this idea of how you render things is certainly valid and production ready. Okay, back to the keynote. Yeah, that was what I wanted to say. So Livewire, server rendered partials. That's what it offers. And instead of you having to code JavaScript, we are going to render HTML on the server, and we are going to send it over the wire and replace it in the DOM. It is production ready. Livewire itself is Laravel specific, but that idea can be ported. And if you want to know more about Livewire, then go to the Livewire website. Okay. Let's go to another topic that is inspired by another ecosystem, and that is testing. PHP unit is still today the de facto test runner in the PHP world, and it is rock solid. But even PHP unit isn't like an invention of the PHP community. There are lots of ex-unit testing frameworks. The first one was from a old language called Smalltalk, and it was called SUnit, and all of the ex-unit testing frameworks, they had inspiration for that. But of course, in the PHP world, we have been blessed with another newish kind of test runner called Pest. It is built upon PHP unit, so it builds on the rock solid foundation, and just like Laravel, it focuses very much on developer experience. So everything should be readable, everything should be nicely to use. And this is also not an idea that came from itself. This was actually inspired by a JavaScript testing framework called Jest. And because it's PHP, we just do the J of JavaScript away. We put the P on front. We have a deadly disease, but also a cool testing framework called Pest. So this is here how a pest test looks like. So it's just a function, and we have like an expectation in there, which reads very nice, right? We expect this to be that. That is much better than regular assertions where you always round up the order of things. Okay, let's see at how we can use that. So I have a test prepared here somewhere. The quote test. Maybe I added this test before I did the component. Maybe I added it after. I don't know anymore. There's a test. That is the most important thing, right? So I'm not going to explain the whole of PHP unit here, but for those that are not up to speed, a very quick run through. So we set up some quotes in the database here that we want to use. Then we have our little test here with our assertion. And so we are going to search for certain quotes. We are going to map those to the results. We want to execute this test multiple times with multiple inputs and verify if I search for first that this comes out, if I search for that comes out. So this is a data set, which I'm pretty sure if you use PHP unit that you're familiar with. So let's rewrite this to a pest test. I've already installed Pest here. Let's first see if this test actually works on macOS Ventura. It still works, so that's good. And I'm going to keep a copy of this so we can reference it later, old quote test. And let's do this manually. I'm going to make myself it a little bit easier for removing this. I'm going to first put everything in comments so I don't This won't execute anymore, but I can still copy and paste things. So this setup method here, what I don't like, no, I'm going to go a little bit further. I need to extend a test case. Why do I need to extend a test case? That is like a technical kind of implementation that isn't really important. So with PEST, you're not going to extend this anymore. This line, we just don't need it anymore at all. Then with the setup method, what I don't like about it is that I need to call parent setup here. And with PEST, you don't need to do that anymore. How you want to write a setup method in the PEST way is by using a before each. You give it a callable, and you just give it the things that you want to do, and you don't need to be bothered with this setup thing at all. So this is what we've done. So now let's add the test itself. And a thing that has always annoyed me a little bit is that, yeah, you need to have these underscores here in that function name. And I know there are smart guys that have sometimes used a character that is not a space, but it looks like a space, so they can have some, yeah, seemingly a space in here, but that looks a little bit weird. With PEST, you can just use the it function, it, and then you can just type normal without any underscores here. And then you give it a function, and here you can put in your test, and we're going to use a dataset later on. So I'm going to pass in these arguments. I'm going to give it the function body here. And instead of this assertion, we are going to use the expectation API here. So I expect the quoted text to be the expected results here, like that. So that is accounts for that whole test. And then this whole data set thing, we don't need like a separate function for that, but we can just tag it onto this test itself. So I want to execute this test with these values, and I'm just going to put it there, and then I've used up everything for my test here, and I have the PEST test. I can lose this import, and if everything went well, then this should be a test that also passes. It can be searched, and you can see that this actually passes. Let's prove that it actually works by changing it and see that it fails. And yeah, I'm not tricking you. This is a real working test. So it's a little bit of a whirlwind overview, but you see that I touched many of the pain points that I felt with PHP unit, and in PEST they are all gone. Let me also draw you to the fact that this test is now 25 lines of code, and with the old test case, we have nearly double the amount of code needed for the same test. I've only shown you, some of the benefits of PEST, but there are actually a whole lot more niceties to be discovered. But this should already give you a hopefully good impression. Okay. So PEST, a wonderful way of writing tests. I'm using this for all my new projects and new packages going forward. I've shown it now here in a Laravel application, but it's framework agnostic. You can use it for a regular PHP project as well. It has lots of nice things like the expectation API that I've shown you. There's also code coverage built in. There's a really nice thing called higher order tests in there, and you can learn more about that on pestphp.com. So this is another example of a nice community package that was inspired by something outside of our community. Okay, now the little dessert for you, the little dessert called Invade. Python. It's a very nice language as well. But did you know that they don't have any private variables as well? at all. I mean, they just don't have it. The concept just doesn't exist, and still they can do a lot of nice things with that language as well. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to just remove private from PHP as well, like, or remove the feeling of safety that you have from using private. So I made a little package for this that will make you feel uncomfortable. So let's see it in action. So final demo of the evening. I called it invade because invade is probably something you shouldn't do, and I wanted to give it like a bad sounding name. Okay, so we have here the invade command, and I have here a class, and that class has a private property. It also has a private method here with this is a secret, and this one returns this is the secret result. So let's go back to the invade command. Let's execute this. Ooh. And of course, we get an exception here. We cannot access the private property. Oh, and I'm actually sending this to Ray, so I'm going to open up Ray again. So you can see here the same thing here. I can't access it. This is what you want, right? Okay, let's invade this class by just adding invade to it, and let's try running that again and see how well private works now. So this is the secret. So there you have it. This also works, this magic with methods as well. So here we have this my private method. Let's remove the invade to see what normal PHP would do. You can see that my IDE already complains about this. Member as private visibility. Yeah, sure, whatever. Call to private method. Can't do it. I think you can. Let's just invade it. This is the secret result. So this is how easily you can just overcome private. Now, I don't think you should use this. This is just for demonstration purposes only. But you might be curious how this works underneath the hood, and it's actually very, very simple. So let's take a look at the definition of invade. We are going to invade a certain object. We are going to wrap it around another object called the invader. You probably haven't named the class that way, right? And what we are going to do is we are going to store a reference to the object, but we are also going to have like the reflected version of that object. So with reflection in PHP, you can just change code at runtime. And what are we going to do? Well, on our invader property, or an invader class, there isn't any other property except for these two, right? So whenever I call here, how is it called in this class? My private property. Let's just add it here again. So here, yeah, it won't auto-complete it. So whenever I call this, that doesn't exist on the invader, but the invader has a magic getter. And what we are going to do here is we are going to change the accessibility of the property on the original object and just return you that. And that gives you the illusion that you are getting it from the original object. And this works the same for methods. So when you call something, if you call like a method on that secret class, you're actually calling it on the invader, and the invader just marks the method that you requested as accessible, and we give you that result. And that is how easily, and you grant me that, right? It's actually a pretty good DX. It isn't very difficult to invade an object. It's just adding a function in there. that's basically all there is to it. So yeah, you probably shouldn't use Invade. Maybe in testing or some kind of special tooling. I do think that reflection in general is a very good thing that a language can have, because it unlocks so much wanted and maybe also unwanted possibilities. And should you dare to want to use Invade in your own projects, it's in that repo over there. So let's start wrapping things up. I think if we want to improve the PHP ecosystem, or whatever ecosystem you're in, you should keep an open mind and look at other ecosystems as well. And when you see cool stuff there, just take those best parts, take those ideas, and bring them to the PHP ecosystem. And when we repeat that enough, then PHP will stay fresh for years to come. For years to come. This not only works for PHP, but for any ecosystem you are in. That is all I have for you. I hope you liked it, including the invade function. And thanks for your attention.
Are there any questions for Freek?
Yes.
Oh, and would you mind repeating the question?
Yeah.
I was wondering, since you said like you probably shouldn't use this, right? Do you think reflection in general has any use case for production environment?
So the question is, does reflection have any use cases for production environments? I think it does. I need to come up with a good example for this. I think in Laravel there's, I don't know if it's actually reflection, but when you call eloquent relation methods, it will actually look from where it's being called to determine what it should be doing. So it's already in the Laravel framework some usages of that. So you're probably already using a little bit of reflection in production right now. So I do think you need to be a little bit careful, but it has a place there as well.
Laravel as well, right?
I don't know by heart, but it could be with all the magic that is in that package. Yeah. More questions? Yeah, Christoph.
If you want, you can tell about the little issue you had some days ago about the relevant live wire, which is a little bit related to the invade. Do you remember?
Which issue was that? Remind my memory.
There's a private method or function was deleted from the framework, which was used by Livewire.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, that was quite a funny one. I was doing an upgrade of a code base, and whenever I deploy something, I run the test suite again, and right at that moment, a new version of Laravel was released. And it totally broke the code. And they actually did remove a function that Livewire was using. But it was a little bit sneakily that they used it. So what Livewire did is they extended Laravel's base class for where they want to override some stuff. And they called a private method or a protected method from Laravel in there, and Laravel didn't account for that that people could do that. But yeah, of course I was bitten by this. Another question.
Yeah, I forgot how it's called, but it's something called fork. In the
Fork.
Example, yeah, with the red pill boot. I have a question. One, is it built in? And two, is there a use case that I can also use in production?
So is fork built? Is fork or the process control function built in, and is there a use case for production? That's the question. Those functions, they are in an extension called process control, and that extension is available by default on almost any Unix-like system. So sorry, Windows users, you don't get to use this because under the hood it uses like Unix's process model. So it piggybacks on that. And I do think you can use something like this in production just to speed up things, like I've shown you with the demo with the speed closures. Yeah, they actually execute at the same time. So if you have some CPU work that you want to do together at the same time, you can use the fork for that.
So what happens when the process is fully done? Is there also a mechanism of garbage collecting where it gets rid entirely of the process?
Yeah, so the question is there a way to determine if everything's done? Yes, there is a way for that. I've not shown it here in the interest of time. I have a command for that as well. You can ask a process if it's done from the parent project, and you can use that to wait until the child is complete and then ask the child what is your result and bring it back to the parent. So there are functions for that as well. There are a little bit heavy to, or kind of, how do you say that, low level to work with, and the fork package hides that from you. You can just return something and it will be available in the parent process. There you go. More questions? One more.
Do you actively use the fork package in your projects, and have you found any limitations or things that you shouldn't do with it?
I don't think we use it heavily in our projects. I think only in one or two small cases that we use it for building up a very large CSV file, if I'm not mistaken. You can find the usage of it in another package of ours called the Laravel collection method package, which is a package that has a lot of handy collection methods that are not in the framework because they are a little bit personalized to my taste. And one of them is called parallel map. And it's like a normal map, but every iteration happens in parallel. And I think we use that in a project. There you go. Yes?
Then maybe as a final question, by the way.
Final question, yeah.
We all know Spatie, but how big is it? For what clients you're working for?
Ooh. So the question is, how big is Spatie and what clients are we working for? I get that question often, and I do think I need to do a talk on this sometimes. We're actually very small. We're only with 9 people. We work not only on open source because that does not pay the bill. We like to work on very big projects. We are currently working on a project where we are working now for, I think, 2 to almost 2.5 years. And yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we like working on, like very big applications. So half of the time we work on that, and the other half we work on our own stuff. Now I always thought like the dream is to do like 100% of our own stuff and don't do client projects anymore. But actually my colleagues and myself as well, we also like doing client work because that keeps us a little bit grounded, you know. Then we have like one foot like in the real world, and we can understand what developers really need, so we can make products for that. And that is a little bit of the vision right now, to always keep some part client project as well.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thanks.